So this is Dr. Van der Kolk's figure from the book, and I think this is helpful in just understanding why our brain acts this way and what it's doing trying to protect us, right? So this is a very, very simplified way of looking at our brain. So on the most basic level, so I guess you can kind of divide the brain into three major sections with three types of main purposes. The most basic part of our brain is what some people call it the reptilian brain, the brain stem and the base of the brain. So it includes the hypothalamus, brain stem, and this just keeps us alive. I mean, it's the main function is make sure that we are all these automatic functions are working in proper order, meaning your breathing, your heartbeat, whether your body's homeostasis in terms of hormones and regulations of various chemicals, sleep, hunger, it's internal physiological sensations. All these things are just very basic, just being able to stay alive, right? Even they call it the reptilian brain because even lizards, have these. And it's the funny thing about many of these lizards. When they see fly, they just kind of stick out their tongue and eat. That's not even like a conscious thing. There's no planning involved. They just react. they just do it, right? And but it's important because if you have to think about how your heart beats every second of your waking time, basically you will not be able to function at all, right? Or like you have to think, how do I breathe? Or how do I regulate my body temperature? That's not possible, right? So this is a very fundamental part of our brain function. And then a newer part of our brain, and in terms of, I guess, evolutionary biology, right? It's a limbic system, the limbic brain or the mammalian brain. So meaning mammals in general also have this part. And this part is more what they call the emotional brain in a sense. It's still pre-conscious. It still has a lot of automatic functioning because it senses all these inputs and experiences and create memories where your new experiences can be compared with. And so where you are, how you are in relationship with others and with other creatures, other people, your surrounding. And so that's how you experience the world, right? So our memory center is also here. But these are mainly still involved in survival. How do you stay safe, and what's a quick way to compare your experience from the past with your current situation, and where is earlier we talked about your brain is creating a map of the world and also find opportunities so you can get the things you need and avoid danger. So a lot of it is still in this part. And then last part, the newest part, most advanced part, and for which the human has the greatest volume in terms of all the animals, is the cortex, the neocortex. And so for human beings, this takes up a huge part of our brain as well. It's about 30%. And other mammals are less. I always like to joke with mom saying the cat only has, I think, like 8% of their brain in their cortex, but dogs have 12. So dogs are more advanced. But human beings have 30%, right? But this is the part where we feel like we have some charge because we have thinking, logic, we can plan things out, we can understand, we can create, we can think ahead, we can make decisions that are analytical, but this is also a huge part of our brain where we stop ourselves from doing the things that are hurting us. So it's the braking system, so to speak, or inhibitory functions of our brain. But oftentimes what I'm finding is that it's really not this part that a lot of people struggle with. Because if you talk to people that are maybe depressed or anxious or having very difficult relationship with others, they all know how to think properly. They all know that they can analyze the situation and say, hey, I really don't think this person has bad intentions, or things like that. They have rational thinking, but regardless, they still feel unsafe, right? So they still feel danger. They still feel extremely anxious. In some people that are maybe have social anxiety or performance anxiety, they know that they are fully competent, but in that context, they still feel the paralysis from anxiety and from stress, right? So it's not the prefrontal cortex, or it's not even the cortex functions that are malfunctioning. It's the alarm systems of the brain that is kicking in. Yeah, so I think explanations like this sometimes can be helpful. And I think if we realize that the brain, the automatic functions of our brain, the lower parts, the limbic system and the brainstem is really trying to protect us. And this is the fast-acting part of our brain. There's a book called Thinking Fast and Slow, I think. It talks about this really, really well in detail. But basically, all our sensations and whether internal or external, they always come through our brainstem first, and then so go through these preconscious part of our brains. And this is the smoke detector, the alarm system of our brain, because it's always scanning our surrounding, the context, and to protect us. But this is the fast acting. It hits there first, and this part of the brain is amazing because it can multitask. It can categorize, memorize, and compare, and even think about, process what strategy to deal with it all at the same time. So this is actually an extremely amazing part of our brain. Sometimes we want to think about ideas, creative ideas. We actually should just give this part of our brain, this processing. Like sometimes you think, oh, I want to write a paper, or I need to create a project. And if you keep thinking about it, actually you get this brain lock, right? You cannot think of anything. But if you just say, I'm going to take some time off, I'm going to do something else, this part of our brain continue to work on that problem while it's doing all this protecting functioning. Yeah. So this is a really efficient part of our brain. But these parts, the amygdala, the hippocampus, the thalamus, these parts are working all the time to detect danger. But what happens is sometimes this part becomes way oversensitive. So it keeps kind of hijacking your prefrontal cortex functions. And so you could not use your rational, logical mind to decipher whether this situation is real, is in fact life-threatening, or is it in fact dangerous or not. Right, so your thalamus take in all these external sensory inputs, and your hippocampus is the memory center, and it compares all these inputs that are coming in, and your amygdala is the alarm system to tell you whether this is dangerous or not. But it doesn't always necessarily get the information doesn't always get passed to your prefrontal cortex, your conscious part of our brain try to decipher, right? So, or even when you can decipher it, the bottom part of the brain is acting so strongly, it's trying to hijack, it's overtaking it, it won't let you believe it. Sometimes you can feel like there's two parts of you kind of fighting. Right, so a lot of times if we try to control using our mind, our emotion, you find it extremely hard, right? It's like, I can't do it. I can rationally understand, but it just doesn't work. And I think that's what a lot of people are experiencing.
Yeah, like just that disconnect between what they think that they should be feeling or what they what they think or what they know reality to be versus how they're reacting to things. And like I think like that example of like public speaking is a good one. A lot of people who have like performance anxiety or stage fright, I think that's kind of what they're experiencing. Like they feel scared, even though, and then there's a little bit of a disconnect between what they're telling themselves should be the case, and what they're actually feeling. And so I think like, I guess this is kind of almost like a fight or flight thing too, where that part of our brain just like we react first before before we're able to, I guess, like process these things. Like we can tell ourselves these things like, oh, it should be like this, or everything should be fine, but sometimes we really just react first. Like one way that I think one area one time I saw this in myself is like I've talked in the past about like my experience with therapy, which wasn't that great. And I remember there's this time where it was a couple years later, I think, after I stopped therapy, and I was walking into a building and I saw my old therapist. I just froze. And I was actually kind of like, I was really confused in the moment too. But I was walking with someone and we were just walking into the building and I saw my old therapist. And I guess that all of that like programming of like fear and everything was still there. And I just froze. And I couldn't talk either. And like the person next to me was asking me like are you okay? You know? And I couldn't answer. I just didn't. I was really frozen. I physically froze and I didn't say anything. And I was thinking, answer, like say something, and stop being weird, because I was kind of aware of the situation, but I just froze. And I didn't. I just had that innate like almost like a physiological reaction to it. And so I think that, you know, there can be like a disconnect between what we're thinking, like the words that we're thinking and what we're feeling. And then oftentimes our body just reacts to this more of a fear response, or this more like reptilian brain, lower level, like reactionary part.
Yeah, and but most of the time we think that we can use this so-called top-down approach to regulate this, and that's what a lot of times people telling us, giving us advice. That's what they're telling us to do, saying, why don't you just think this, believe this, right? You get, don't look at the situation this way, right? So they're trying to tell our prefrontal cortex how to think. And then say, well, then you can, if you think this way, you should be able to behave this way, right? But the thing is, that doesn't work because most people already know. It's not a knowledge problem. It's not a thinking logic problem, but it's the... Yeah, I remember one, I have this group where I just... it's a spiritual practices group where people learn how to regulate their inner lives, their souls, not so much using quote unquote right thinking, because these are adults. They have tons of right thinking. Everybody knows what to think. But it's more of a bottom up approach where you calm the body first. And so this person is saying, so after a few weeks of practice, she's able to calm herself. She does that, in the morning and also before going to sleep. But she used to have problem just sleeping because she has some physiological issues where she get vertigo for no reason. So she's afraid to sleep. She sleeps like a stiff board, right? But after some calming, her nervous system calms, and then she can, in fact, be relaxed, right? So this is not like, oh, I know I'm healed, so I can just sleep however I should be able to relax, right? But you can't. Your body won't let you relax, and because it's still worried that you're going to get in trouble. So it's trying to protect you. So you actually want to calm that part of the brain first. And that's, I think, what happens to a lot of people in different contexts, including performance anxiety, right? So sometimes people take like beta blockers to reduce the part of our brain function, so you can stay calm. But then I think we have physiological capacity to impact that using a lot more natural approaches, and so we talked about the brain structure in terms of the brainstem, the midbrain, and your lower brain, midbrain, and our cortex. But that is also tied into our, what we mentioned earlier, your nervous system, right? Because when we are in that activated mode, we are in sympathetic. So if you look at the graph, then the pink section is the sympathetic. Some people call it the accelerator or the gas pedal part of our nervous system. So when our brain detects that there are some events we need to address, then that kicks in, and that gives all your physiological functions a boost. And these signals are oftentimes generated through our hormones, stress hormones, right? So our eyes become sharper, and our hearts start to beat faster, and also our lung capacity increases, and it also shuts down digestion because, hey, we don't need to digest anything. We're in life danger. And then your liver pumps glucose into the bloodstream so that you can be ready to activate your muscles and fight, right? And your kidneys would have released adrenaline, all those things. And in fact, you can trigger these things very quickly. So I used to wear, when I was playing around with continuous glucose monitors, so I had this implant in my arm. And I was practicing very low carb diet, so I eat my normal foods, and you basically all the blood glucose is flat. But then I would go to the swimming pool and I would jump into the cold pool. It's about like 8-9 degrees Celsius, so it's like in the low 50s, right? Low 50s Fahrenheit. I would just go in there for a few minutes, and you see a spike in blood glucose that is as high as like eating a piece of bread. So that's a stress response, right? But it's very short, because I just get out, and a few minutes later that curve goes down right away. So that's what your body is supposed to do. Your autonomic nervous system is supposed to do that. It gives you a quick reaction to address danger, and then you should come back very quickly. Where your parasympathetic nervous system, the braking system, or the restore and repair system kicks in, right? So your digestion comes back, your heart rate slows down, and your liver will release bile instead of glucose, because you're supposed to be taking in food and it help you digest, and your intestines is supposed to once again be receiving nutrients and so forth. So that's the natural course of event if your ANS is very flexible, right? But I think what happens right now is that we are so stuck. So many people are so stuck in sympathetic mode. We don't repair. Our repair functions are inhibited, so we're going to get sick. We're going to develop all kinds of even chronic conditions, whether your immune system goes out of whack, or you become very susceptible to viruses, colds and flus, and even like things like COVID, and because we're in such a stress mode, our body is not able to defend or repair. And one of the ways that I track this is using HRV devices, like heart rate variability devices. I know this is kind of advanced. I don't know if we'll talk about it today, but yeah, I wear this thing called the Aura ring, right? So if you look at the inside, it's this like digitized electronic ring. Right? I have to charge it once in a while, but it gives me a picture of my nervous system, whether it's very flexible, whether it's in good condition. I also been wearing this device called Fora O2. I tape it up because there's a blue light, and I don't want it to interfere with my sleep at night. But yeah, so I just wear it on my finger. So it takes my pulse and also HRV throughout the night, as well as blood oxygen levels. Because a lot of people, when they sleep, they don't breathe properly, so their oxygen levels take a dip, and that is also it can be pretty harmful as well. But these will tell me how my sympathetic nervous system is doing. Recently, a man started doing neurofeedback also because it's just a recent stress event. He became so anxious, and every day in the afternoon he would just start. His heart rate will go up, and he would get these tension headaches. And he would become kind of jittery, and it's for weeks he could not calm down. And he did neurofeedback with me to address some other issue before, so he thought, hey, maybe this can help again. So he came back. So he's doing it's just like a boost 10 session, and so we're 3 sessions in, he's already calming down, even just the first session. So it's clearly a nervous system thing, right? He knows he doesn't need to be anxious. Whatever he was addressing, it's already addressed. But his nervous system would not calm down. He's still stuck in the fight or flight mode. Yeah. So I think brain structure and nervous system quite crucial. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess to talk a little bit more, like even just about this, like the sympathetic fight or flight or the parasympathetic rest and digest. I think that that's the sympathetic, the fight or flight is where we see a lot of people stuck in now, like you were describing with that guy. And like that's where we see a lot of people with anxiety, where people are just anxious all the time or stressed all the time, and it's like they're wired, and maybe they start their day and then at night they can't calm down. So that's someplace I see that a lot too. But yeah, like that's the part like associated more with the anxiety.
Yeah, and I think that I really want to let people know that it's not like there's something wrong with you. It's not your fault. It's not like you're thinking wrong, or you have wrong beliefs, or wrong behavior, or you're like an undisciplined person. I don't think it's that. It's really there's something that's much more fundamental that is happening, and your body is reacting, trying to protect you. So I think that we don't need to carry guilt associated with these things.